What in the world are we all doing here?
Welcome everyone to the second episode of the Cowgirl Channel of Canada. We're so excited to share with you this special interview with one very special Canadian cowgirl, Mona Lewis. Mona grew up in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, a place that will take your breath away. Horses are simply her life and still are to this day. Mona became a full-time coach and trainer at the early age of 18. Mona also became very passionate about learning the discipline of reining. Mona's love of teaching grew, and she is well known for coaching some of the best riders in the Maritime provinces today. Mona and her husband Dan built a beautiful stables in the Coxheath hills of Cape Breton, where they still live today. In 1997, Mona took her J's Flashy Jac to the NRHA Futurity. That is a career highlight and something only some of us dream of achieving. Mona has ridden and trained with some of the greats over the years and continued to compete in reining, achieving some amazing accomplishments throughout her competitive years. In 2014, placing 8th at the finals at the NRHA standings. She's a certified level 2 Western performance coach, clinician and equine judge, passionate and full of knowledge, a true iconic forewoman in the Canadian equine industry. Please welcome my dear friend, Mona Lewis.
Hello, Lori. How are you today?
Great. I'm great. Sun is shining and it's a good day, right? There's horses. It's a good day.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, it's. I really appreciate you asking me to do this. I'm a little bit nervous, and hearing you say all that stuff, it's like, who are you talking about? You know. But I've been in this horse game a long time, and it's been a blessing.
Yeah. So some of the things that we're really excited to have you on here, and one of the reasons that I had reached out to you is because we have a little tiny bit of history, you and I. I've been out to your farm, and one of the things that I said to a previous guest is that we all find each other, us women and us equestrians and us Canadian cowgirls. We find each other in different ways in life. Sometimes it's in the darkest times of our lives, and sometimes it's in the brightest, most amazing ways. So how you and I already met at one point down the road when I came out to your place, and I had no idea at the time when I came out to meet you, the presence I was in, this wonderful woman that's done so much in the equine industry. I was like, woohoo! When I started looking up stuff on you, I was like, wow, this lady has done stuff. You could teach me any day. So I'm gonna ask you a couple questions. Tell us a little bit about your history, because I know you started off into the horse world, the equine world, at a very, very early age, like most of us do. And so just tell us a little bit about your family and that first start of your first horse.
Well, I started riding when I was about 4 years old. My father had got me a really nice pony, and
awesome.
He was a really good pony, and we ended up going when I was 5, going to all the exhibitions. He would haul myself and my brother to all the exhibitions. There was no such thing as horse shows back then.
Yeah.
This is back in 1962-ish, and we used to go to the exhibitions in Charlottetown and at the Halifax Winter Fair when it was held in downtown Halifax, and they were really great memories. My parents, we didn't have a whole lot, but they sure made, they'd bring our friends with us, and we had great memories of horse shows back then.
Awesome.
Or exhibitions. Yeah, my parents weren't horse people as such. My mom's cousin, Marjorie Smith, she's passed on a couple of years ago, but she had a lot to do with my start. She had a horse, and her daughter had a horse, and my cousin Kim Beaton, and we traveled and showed horses together as little girls, just with our pony. Yeah, so wow. That's kind of how I got hooked. It just became part of life.
Yeah, and so it was initially really your dad that introduced you to that first horse, and so I mean, at 4 years of age, you mean it's impossible for you to look back and remember anything without a horse, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, my sister's mare, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my sister's mare had a foal, and I remember going on a rainy morning up to the barn and Dad telling me that it was mine. And so anyway, he helped me train it in his best way, with peppermints or whatever. But anyway, he helped me get on her, and I was training horses at the age of 10.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
She went on to be quite a horse as well.
Wow. Wow, that's so cool. And it's funny, like, because I had mentioned too, like, in talking to some of these women that I'm talking to in the equine industry, one of the things that's there that I'm noticing now, just getting started, is that that part about it being like, the cowgirl up kind of thing with the dad, and in some form, you're like, for me personally, like, my father has been a huge influence in my upbringing on a farm and having animals around, and you learn. I think your parents teach you a certain thing when you grow up on a farm. It's a blessing, right? Because you learn how to handle hard times, right?
For sure.
Yeah, your parents are a big part of it, right?
Yeah. There's not a day that goes by when I don't hear his words about something, or he's not mentioned. And of my mom too, but Dad was, always teaching me things. Yeah. Wow. And I was pretty lucky.
Wow. And so you're at 4, you've got your first horse, you're going to expositions, you're 10 years old, you're training your first horse with your father, and then so the next part of your life, you are at the early age of 18 years old, and you're a full-time coach and a trainer at Burnside Stables. Tell me how did that kind of come into play? Was it something like you approach them, or did they approach you, or?
No, well, actually, just to go back a little bit, I guess I was around 13, 14, where Marjorie, the lady I spoke about earlier, she had got myself and some of my horsey friends a job, like a grant to travel around and teach people, other kids to ride in all the different counties here in Cape Breton.
Cool.
So with that, I got the experience of teaching people and of having fun, and it was just all positive. And then when that had stopped, I wanted to continue, so I just kept teaching. And Pat now in Henderson owned an arena just up the road from our old barn, and they said, if you want to fix it up, you go right ahead, it's yours to use. So
wow.
So I worked at Burnside and for 10 years, and I think that got me into the business and getting to make some connections. And it was a school of hard knocks for sure, training horses and being dragged around and mucking stalls till midnight. You got to go through that to get to the other end for sure. Yeah.
And then, so I mean, and that's wonderful. Like, I mean, so you basically it was just it just kept evolving, and I mean, by the time you actually turned into adulthood, you had already had all these years in your life, your early lifetime experience already into horses in such a big way. So then you moved into the competitive aspect of riding, and you became more of a coach that actually turned out some really great riders in the Maritime provinces, and people to this day, that I know personally, and I've left Newfoundland now for a long time. I still have people out there that know and speak your name quite highly. So
yeah, I think I was 18 and I got on a plane and flew to Newfoundland and did my first clinic. I was so nervous, and flying on an airplane, by myself, it was quite an experience. I love it over there. No, and so that's great. So it really has been that it's true that 'cause some people get involved in horses or the horse industry in some form at a different point in their lives, but you've actually, it's been something that just it is your life, And so what was some of the other things that happened, when you got into your early adulthood and you got out competing? What was that like? Well, when I was at Burnside, I ended up becoming partners with a horse named Happy Copper, and he was an appendix quarter horse, and he was a little bit ahead of his time. He was such a fluid mover. It was back in the day when there were still the bulldog type of quarter horses. Anyway, we got to show him like in Cowgirl, Maine, and these places, and we could see this horse he was a really, really good horse. He would win Western Pleasure and English, like Hunter Under Saddle, and he was really a great horse. So their daughter rode him, and we ended up going to Quarterama, and she won, and we had some great placings at the in Quarterama. Like that would have been in '84 and '85.
Wow. Great
experience of showing in downtown Toronto.
Okay.
And then from there, all along, I always had a little, feel for the reining and the Western riding. But at that point in my life, I was heavy into the English riding.
Oh, wow.
And then, I guess I got a couple, in training horses, you start trying to figure things out. And I got involved in the coaching program in the early 80s through the Nova Scotia Equestrian Federation. And I remember riding with or taking a test or something with Collins was his name. Anyway, he said, listen, he said, you're a good rider, but keep going, just keep learning, take as many clinics as you can.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get enough.
Right.
I just kept going. So I started bringing, and then of course I got married, and then I had a beautiful son, and we ended up building the business. My husband came home from the armed forces to start the business with me.
Okay.
And we ended up building an indoor arena. We're going to have 10 horses, and at one point we were up to 44 horses at one time.
Wow.
It just went crazy. So, but I learned that, and a little bit of advice, that big is not always better. You're better to keep it smaller, and you just get overworked, but keep it smaller was a lot. Like, I used to, be doing stalls, giving lessons, riding horses till midnight every night for so long, trying to raise a family. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, well,
what made you think?
It's the way of the cowgirl. It's our lives too, right? And that's definitely a part of it. It becomes your lifestyle. It's a way of living. It's not a hobby, as some people think, and you do it part-time and you can shut all that down. Those animals have to be fed and they have to be cared for, and then if you're passionate about stuff. So I'm just going to step back into a little bit what you talked about there, just for other people that are listening, our audience. Could you explain a little tiny bit more about the reining discipline? And the reason I'm asking you is because we're going to have a different variety of people, from arts and entertainment to ranch riders and beef owners and so forth, with women on this channel. But for what you've been involved in, and because you have such a behind the scenes, I guess, personal take on it, can you tell the audience just in general why you got passionate about reining and what reining is? Just a little bit about the discipline.
Well, the reason was I couldn't get enough about training horses, and as I trained horses, I wanted to know how to get them to do more things, and in a way that, it's not forced or anything, but so through riding with some great trainers, I got to learn how the horse thinks, what to do when the horse does a certain thing, and why it does it, and that sort of thing. So what I find that the reining is kind of like your, a high level of riding, where you have to be able to get the horse to do all those maneuvers, like to run it at a controlled speed into a top speed, and just with a movement of the seat or a little bit of rein, then whoa, they'll slide, stop, like drive their 2 hind feet into the ground and slide, or spin like on their 2 hind legs. But it's all done very, you have to get it so that the horse knows that he's doing it for you. You're not forcing the horse to do it. The horse has to do maneuvers that are very similar where it originated. Was the maneuvers originated from when the cowboys used to work cattle, and see my horse, it can turn this way this quick and turn that way this quick, and I was just intrigued with how you could get the horse to do these things so willingly. Mm-hmm. And that's what a reining horse is willingly guided, and that's why I chose that, and from it helped with all my other disciplines. And I would still be teaching. I've done barrels and hunter and ranch riding and stock horse, all the events. But the reining is just horse training. It's just getting your horse real broke.
Wow.
Yeah.
I you know what? Like, just listening to you talk about that, I just totally forgot what we're doing. For just a minute, I forgot what we're doing, because I was like, but the thing is too, for me specifically, is that I got that itch back in when I first started off as a trainer. And I think that's one of those things that I love about the discipline, about reining specifically, is that willingly guided and that willing partner and stuff. And when you get to an understanding of the maneuvers, and you get to an understanding of what that discipline can offer you with your horse as a team, then you start to realize that it's more than that. It's more than just training. It becomes such a dance, right? It just really is a dance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to I brought in trainers here to my place, which I recommend with anyone starting out. I brought Francois Gauthier, at the time was still in Quebec, and then he would come here, and then we, my students and I would train with him. And then eventually I said a real turning point in my life was when I was at a clinic with him, and we're looking at videos of colts and A-track, by the way. and I said, Francois, I would really love to be able to do this. I would love to be able to, go to Congress or go to, the World Show or the Futurity. And Francois said, and he's a very quiet man, and he just shrugged his shoulders in his French accent, and he said, I don't see why not. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't sleep that night. I was so excited. I was going to do this thing. I was going to buy a colt from him and take it to somewhere. Anyway, I ended up I bought a colt, and with the help of, and I had another trainer that used to come to my place, was Vern Saperja. He was originally then from Moose Jaw, but he's now in Austria.
Okay.
And he was great to help me and teach me to train and understand things. So I looked at these tapes, and Vern was there, and he says, he helped me pick out which one to buy. Anyway, I bought this colt, and not having a whole lot of money, but it was an investment, and it was a really good investment. So I brought him back, and I trained him myself, and I would call these guys once in a while, because I'm very isolated here from reiners back then in Cape Breton, and I would ask, what about this? And I remember someone saying, I was saying he's not spinning real good. He's moving his hind end a little bit. Just keep working on it. Don't try to push too hard or whatever. And it was kind of online training back then. And so I ended up going to Oklahoma in '97 with Jay's Flashy Jac, and he was by Francois Stallion, Boogie's Flashy Jac.
Wow.
And so I ended up going down to North Carolina with my son, and we got a motor home, and my husband and I, and off we went. And I went down there for 2.5 months and trained, and got to ride a bunch of horses at Francois. Wow. And then we went to Oklahoma, and I got to meet and got to ride the arena where Tim McQuay was and all his boys, and they're training in this big place. And
you were living the dream. You were living the dream. That's a dream.
Yeah. So then we went to the Futurity, and that time there was over 500 entries in the open division, and Jack and I mean, it's not big, but we placed 110th out of 500. But Francois says, you stayed on pattern. There's a lot of big guys that didn't. So I was pretty thrilled with just the experience, and to be there, and it was a great experience in my career.
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. I think it's pretty impressive, and just looking at some of the stuff about that, you talking about going to the NRHA Futurity, for some people that's a career highlight, and it's something that people sit around and they dream about doing, being in those big arenas, and you know, going in, right, and like listening to the woo, right, for your, and it's a dream.
Yeah, I was walking into the arena and it says Gateway of Champions overhead, and I go, oh my God, the last time I rode this colt was in North Sydney.
Yeah, and look where you were.
And the biggest thing for me was I had never shown in a pen with, you know, like 6 people on my left and 4 people on my right, you know, like each judge had a scribe. And, yeah, it was that might kind of just thinking about it again.
No, like congratulations on that and all the things that you've done and achieved. And you know what, part of the reason that I'm really passionate about doing what I'm doing about this is so that people can understand, like, you know, for me personally, you know, I'll let you in on a little secret. That is a dream of mine. Like, you know, you're sitting down and if you're watching it on a TV or computer screen or your phone and you're watching those runs go, and I've recently gotten really interested in rein cow horse. I just love it.
But one of my students just won the Hackamore.
Oh, really?
Down in Texas. There.
Oh yeah, just beautiful. It's a beautiful sport. Anything to do with the equestrian industry, even dressage, is something that I love. But for some people, what you've done and you've already achieved back then with Jac is like, that's a dream, and it's, you know, that's your highlight, that's your career, that's your mark that you made. Like, I'm done. Mic out, right? Mic down. Drop the mic or whatever. Yeah.
Before the internet.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah.
And you've done other things since then, like you've competed like on a regular basis as well. Like as you went through, you're competing and you're coaching and you're mentoring all these other young women. I mean,
yes.
so at what point did you ever think that, like, well, I'm not going to do this anymore? Is that ever been something that you've thought about, like the mentoring and the coaching and the competitive? How did you balance all that?
Well, after Jac, you know, what I ended up doing was I ended up training a lot of colts and a lot of horses. I trained horses for people, and I think I continued my education with that. I sure wish I had Jay's Flashy Jac now and knew what I, you know, knew then. But yeah, I continued my education with that. And the more I taught, the more I learned. And so I ended up raising babies and selling them to my students and trained them. And when I took a team to Quebec one year for the Canadian Championships, and all 4 horses on the team were by my stud.
Wow! And
it just happened that way. They were, you know, and so then you know, as I went on, and I started training horses for Sumac. That's where I met my dear friend Rona Thompson. She runs Sumac in New Glasgow, and it's you know, I kind of got her involved, and now she's breeding, you know, world-class reining horses. And so my whole plan was to build reining in the Maritimes. Really, that was my goal. And then on one of our trips, Rona's got a call from Matt Hudson. He's selling this gunner mare, and it was always my dream to have a gunner, because I showed a horse years and years ago by Mr. Gunsmoke. And so I bought the mare, and Matt had started her, and I finished her, and in 2014 we were 8th in the world in limited open.
Wow,
yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
NRHA. Yeah.
Wow.
So she really highlighted my career, this mare, and I still have her. I still have Jac too, but with this mare, I did that. But then I had a couple of accidents. I was down at Francois and picking up a horse, and I got thrown and a punctured lung and broke all my ribs and my left leg. Everything was all busted up.
real cowgirl stuff. That's the real cowgirl stuff.
So that slowed me down, and there's a couple other bumps in the road, and that's when I decided I was going to stop training horses as such for, you know, for the public. And but I kept training my own, and a couple here, and so when I lost my barn, it was another thing that has happened to me. In the year that I was showing my Annie, that Done Smoking in Hollywood is the mare's name that did so well, that placing. That year, I lost my indoor arena to snow load.
Yeah.
And then I was at a horse show with her, and I lost my horse trailer. Really good horse trailer. The bottom let go in it.
Oh no!
And, yeah, on the highway. I was going along, and I could see smoke coming. But just luckily, I'm surrounded by good angels. That's for sure. And,
yeah.
And so then that's every time I'd go to a show with my good mare, we'd win and get a big check. I'd come home and there'd be something that would happen. And one other little dog, a Black Russell, we lost him when I came home. Another was an old lesson horse that we had for years. He broke his leg. And everything just kept. But then that year she won 8th in the world, so it was a little bittersweet.
Yeah, I'd say.
And I lost track. What was your question?
Oh, I think you definitely answered it. But I'm going to go back over and just ask you one question. When you think about all that, you think about the change, and balancing all that stuff in your life, the coach, being a competitive person out in the equine world and traveling in and out and all that stuff. Is there anything in that early stage part of your life that you would go back and say, hey, if you could be you, tap yourself on the shoulder and say, hey, can I just give you one piece of advice? Is there anything that you would say to yourself back then that would have been like, like for example, it's going to get a lot sweeter, just hang in there, or something like that? Do you ever feel like there's something that you would love to say to yourself back then?
No, I can't think of anything right offhand. And everything kind of like when it happened, when a bad experience happened or a good experience, I just move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. I try not to look back. Yeah.
That's good. That's excellent. Yeah. Well, there's nothing you can do about what's behind us, right? So yeah.
No, it's all like my whole life. I'm at a certain part in this journey, and I have had some great horses and great people around me, and I've learned a lot. But I've got 2 grandchildren now, and that's been that's my destination of those 2.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your personal life, your family life, as being a coach and a horse trainer and all this stuff. As you've gone through it all, when you started off at 18 years of age as a full-time trainer, obviously your focus is there, and you can work the 20 hours a day that we punch in. And then when you became a mom and other things in your life happen and you get out competitively, what's some of the things that have changed for you now that part of your life has now changed again? So you have your son is grown and gone, and you have a couple grandbabies. Is there a lot more freedom in there in your time?
A little bit. I still keep myself quite busy, but I mean, through this whole thing, I mean, my parents ended up living up here on the farm with us, and I looked after my mom when she was very sick, and my dad, he kind of went more sudden, and then that was probably the hardest time. Yeah. As you know, it's hard losing your parents.
Yeah, it is.
But then I couldn't have done all this without my husband. Like
he's a pretty special guy. Yeah, I love him. He's fantastic. He's funny. He's such a funny guy.
Oh, well, funny. So he's been a police officer for a long, long time, since 1980, and he's looking at retiring now. He's still working, but I couldn't have done any of this without him and his support. Like even now, like I don't have my arena, but he gets up there and he'll drag the back ring and plow the snow off it now, and so he's fixing things, and he's been my support for sure.
Yeah. And that's a big part of all of what we're doing, and I think, again, I'll go back to a little bit about why I'm doing this and having everybody on here and giving, our Canadian cowgirls from the East Coast to the West Coast a little bit of a voice. And it doesn't matter if you're, seasoned person and you've grown up on a ranch, or if you're just wanting to become a horse trainer and you're 17 years old. I think it's important for us to all connect and support each other, and especially in today's times with what's going on in the world with the pandemic. We've all fortunately or unfortunately have had to slow down, and see things a little differently. And that's kind of a little bit about my horsemanship philosophy and how I feel about that. So we'll get to that point too. Is just, so would you like to be able to share with our audience a little bit about your horsemanship philosophy? So what does it look like if someone, when you look at a client that's standing in front of you that you're teaching or you're training, and you're watching them evolve as a rider, what does it look like, your philosophy, when you're teaching that person?
Well, as I say, I don't train horses myself anymore as such. I train the odd one here and there, but not like 6-7 horses like I used to a day. But when I look at a student and I watch them, I usually can find there's probably one thing that they may be weak at or strong at. But if it's something that they're weak at, we'll work on that, and that usually seems to help everything else that they do with their horse. And they, as I see them grow and get better, like there's one young girl, she's got a mare, and the mare's a bit feely and reactive, and she's just a green rider. But working with her here the other day, it was just like, wow, she is learning to ride. Like there's always that moment where you go, okay, she's got this now, yeah. And you see them doing things that you don't have to tell them to do it. I remember teaching years ago, and I had one of my students, and if she hears this, she'll know who it is. I remember her saying to me, I don't know what to do when I'm not in a lesson. And that's when I learned, like, I have to teach my students to be independent, to think for themselves, and be aware of what the horse is doing, and look after themselves on the horse.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that that's beautiful. I love that philosophy, that idea of how you're connecting with your customers, your clients, and they become your family, they become your friends, right?
Oh yeah.
And
yes,
you
very
take
much.
you take it personal. So when you see that and you're like, in your own mind without saying it out loud, there you go, you're getting it.
Yes.
Those are beautiful moments, and that's what it's all worth, right? That's what it's for, to get that feeling and like, I did something great here, right? But yeah, like you've had like a multitude of students and people come in and out of your life, from what you've done and going out to the US and competing and stuff like that. You've met tons of different people along the way.
Yes.
You experience all those different things that happen at home base, at home, and with your family and stuff. As a professional trainer and as a judge and stuff right now, would you say there was anything that was a real pinpoint, like a specific thing that evolved you as a horse trainer, like something that really just, stopped you completely in your tracks and said, okay, I can't do that anymore, I have to do this?
Yeah, well, I was very lucky and very particular with who I trained with, and I got to I find, as I look back, there's like I could tell you when I'm teaching someone, I could tell them, what I learned from a certain trainer. Like, I mean, like over the years, I got to learn a lead change from Bob Anthony back in the 70s. Like, he's one of the legendary greats, like back then, and it was just to be able to say that I got to ride with him was amazing. I think I was very young when I figured that out. It was like I always rode to try and make the horse do it. I was like, I think back in my younger years, like always, never allowing the horse to make a mistake. And I got to ride with Sophie Lavadier put me on to the guy she was training with. His name is Cape Breton, and he trained many great people. And I remember just learning to let the mistake happen, and when the mistake happens, bring the horse back, and it slowed me down. And when I learned that, I learned to just enjoy the ride and take my time and think about it instead of I gotta get this done, I gotta get this horse to do this. Like, you can't do that anymore. That's kind of cool. When as you were describing that, how you felt, it kind of made me think of a funny analogy that I could use at my clinics. But it's like me driving on the highway headed from here to out west or something and missing my turn, like missing my ramp. There's nothing I can do. I gotta keep going.
get turned around and go back is no big deal. Just keep going. And I'll tell you, that's happened to me quite a few times.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of getting all worked up about it?
Yeah. Oh my God, Mona, it's been such a pleasure talking to you and having you on. And when I first started doing this, and I sat down and I started to create the bucket list of great women that I wanted to have on here, you were one of the first ones.
Well, thanks, Lori.
Yeah.
Great to hear that. But it's kind of, I don't know what to say about something like that.
You know what? And that's one of the things that I truly loved about you. That first time you had me in your house and just, having tea and stuff like that. I didn't want to leave. It was such a great feeling to be around someone like you. And then the experiences that you shared with me, and you're just a genuine person. And I think it's really important. We're all doing stuff in our lives in general, and then in the horse world, and then in in a general form. One of the things that I love about the reason why I'm doing this is because I've met some great people along the way, but there's so many that I haven't. And there's everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a journey, and there's a lot of people like yourself or like me that are just kind of humble, just happy to do what we're doing. And you have an opportunity to share some really amazing things, whether it's your stories or training tips and stuff like that, and the knowledge and all the experiences that you've experienced. As you say that, I think about, showing all these years, and I trained with people, and I've never told anybody this, but for years I just did it because I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed every minute of it, and when I got my good mare, and I'm going in the ring, and my last show she scored a 73, and I want to, I have a little bit of pressure on, and I know I got a good horse here. That was the first time I really made myself become competitive and get in there and do it. So it's I learned that. I was like, I can do this. I don't have to be I enjoy every minute of it, but if I just push a little bit more, you can get that little bit more out of your horse. Yeah, that's a thing I kind of said to you too about doing this. It's right on the other side of where you feel nervous and fear. That feeling on the other side, that's that place that you need to be. It's drawing you to there, and that's why, just to even go back to you going and competing at the NRHA, I mean, in general, I mean, I get kind of like that butterflies, that feeling every time I go into a ring for anything. So I think that's really great. And I had someone really special in my life, Barbara Schulte, tell me that fear is a very healthy thing. And all the things that we do as cowgirls here in Canada, and how we are and how resilient we are and how we persevere and we just push through because we can. And we've had great people around us, our family, our friends, and great horses. It gives us that reason to get up and do it again.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's been a good life.
Yeah, it is, and so much more left to go. So one question I have left is, I'm throwing out a favorite question just specifically for you. What's one thing that you think is the best part about being a cowgirl and living the lifestyle of a cowgirl that's unique to just cowgirl lifestyle?
Well, I guess being my own boss. I've been my own boss my whole life. It has its ups and downs. I mean, you actually do work harder for yourself. Mm-hmm. You expect a lot from others that are working for you or training with you. You kind of expect them to kind of fill in for what you want them to do. That's I really think that. Just got to work hard and give it your best shot.
Awesome. Well, Mona, I got to say, I am so thrilled, and I think that I think you and I could probably talk for forever, and throw some stories around about broken bones, rib cages, and this horse and that. And I think we have in the past a little bit. I think we found ourselves in the wee hours of the night doing that. But I loved having you on. And when this pandemic is over, the reason I started off doing the Cowgirl Channel of Canada was that once I actually got out and back on the road again, touring around, that I would do these things in person. But with all the lockdowns and everything now, I'm doing what I'm being dealt with, and so I'm doing it this way. But I would sure love to, when I get back out to the East Coast, come visit with you guys out in Coxheath Hills and in Cape Breton, because it's dear to me to be on the East Coast for sure, and sit down and we'll do a film live interview from the farm. How do you feel about that?
Wouldn't that be fun? Right now you talk about broken bones. Well, I've got a new knee replacement. I'm sitting on a treadmill while I'm talking to you.
Well, congratulations, by the way, on that. Because I remember the last time we were talking about that, and when I was out and we were looking at that Liberty Horsemanship, about you talking about that, that restriction about that, and I love to hear that you're back in the saddle again, riding, and go girl.
Yes. No, don't let things like that stop you. Just you keep on going.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome.
Well, Lauren, it's been really nice chatting with you. It's we always have some good conversation. And I hope you can get out here sometime.
Yes, thank you so much. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
To find out more about the National Reining Horse Association, please visit their website at NRHA.com. To rein a horse is not only to guide him, but also to control his every movement. The best reined horse should be willingly guided or controlled with little or no apparent resistance and dictated to completely.